Hello and welcome. These videos are based on the second edition RBT task list approved by the Behavior Analyst Certification Board. My name is Lanice and I will be guiding you through Section 11. Section 11 will cover RBT task list items A1, preparing for data collection, and A2, implement continuous measurement procedures, for example, frequency and duration. The goals of this section are: 1, provide you with specific recommendations for preparing for your data collection responsibilities. 2, review the rationale for measurement. 3, review the dimensional properties of behavior, in other words, the distinct features that can be measured. 4, describe the difference between continuous and discontinuous data collection procedures. And 5, detailed overview of the continuous data collection you will use as a registered behavior technician. We take data regarding the various programming implemented with clients to fill the last A in ABA, being analytical. To remind you all, ABA is the analysis of socially significant behavior, and in science, the most widely accepted method of showing results of experiments is through quantifying results. So what that means is that we are producing a number, specifically a percentage, at the conclusion of each program and comparing them over time to see if those numbers are going up, going down, or staying the same. It is this data, or these numbers, that inform our supervising BCBAs of the effectiveness of the interventions that are designed. We take data during in-home sessions, and it is used to inform our supervising BCBAs of the effectiveness of the treatments plans they design. It also aids our BCBAs in making smart decisions about whether to continue, discontinue, or alter a given program. Rather than a BCBA making decisions based upon assumption or intuition, we are helping informing their programming decisions and are preventing mistakes, like continuing ineffective treatment or discontinuing an effective treatment. Now that we have discussed why we take data, let's talk a little bit about the particulars of data collection. First, it's important to know the medium through which you will be collecting and reporting data. For most clients of the Lovaas Center, you'll be using a combination of old school data collection methods like paper and pencil, as well as electronic data reporting. We typically use paper and pen or pencil to document data for each program on a child's program checklist, and then report daily scores on an electronic document. Next, you will need to be conscious of the context in which services are being delivered. Are you running discrete trial training in the client's home? Are you acting as an aide in the school setting? Or are you providing services in a community-based setting? These are all important questions to consider, as each setting or context requires a level of flexibility in how to not only conduct the programming itself, but in how to most effectively collect data that corresponds to that programming so it is legitimate. Third, you will want to familiarize yourself with devices utilized to help collect data. The dimensional properties of behavior. Let's move on to these dimensional properties I brought up a little while ago. There are 3 dimensional properties of behavior. The first is repeatability or countability. Repeatability means when a behavior can be counted. Some examples could include things like the number of times a child gets out of a chair, successful uses of the toilet in a given day, or number of correct responses. The second dimensional property of behavior is temporal extent. This means that the behavior can be measured in amounts of time. For example, how long someone sits in a chair is the temporal extent of sitting in a chair. How long a child protests is the measure of temporal extent. Lastly, temporal locus is our third dimensional property of behavior. Temporal locus measures when a behavior occurs. So things like at what time of day a child eliminates in either a pull-up or toilet, or how long from when I deliver my instructions does it take a child to respond. Measurement and its various types. Now we're going to begin discussing the different and specific types of data you can collect. There are 2 umbrella terms for all of the various methods in which data can be collected. The first are continuous data collection methods, and the second are discontinuous data collection methods. Continuous versus discontinuous data collection. Continuous data collection captures every possible occurrence of behavior either by recording each instance of behavior or by recording the number of seconds each instance of behavior occurs. Using continuous measurement procedures are particularly advantageous for collecting data on behaviors that, 1, are free operant, meaning that there is no instruction, SD, or other discriminated contingency preceding these behaviors. 2, have an obvious beginning and end. 3, can be engaged in at any time. And 4, do not take inordinate amounts of time to complete. Discontinuous data, on the other hand, captures only a sample of behavior during an observation. Using discontinuous measurement procedures are advantageous for collecting data on behaviors that 1, last a long time, or 2, occur on a high frequency. Now let's dive into the specific continuous data collection procedures you will use as an RBT. The first we will discuss is frequency and rate. Frequency means taking data on the total number of times a behavior occurs. For example, total number of times you threw a baseball, left your seat, or raised your hand in class. The easiest and most popular method for collecting frequency data is through the use of tally marks. Rate is related to frequency in that you cannot compute the rate of behavior without first collecting frequency data. The rate of a behavior is computed using the following formula: the total number of instances of that behavior divided by the amount of time in which that frequency is recorded. It's important to know that frequency measures should only be used if the length of the observation time is consistent from one observation to the next. For example, a 10-minute time interval for recording the number of words a child reads. Rate measures should be used when an observation time varies. For example, number of words read per minute. Frequency and rate data are the most popular methods for data collection in ABA and are usually reported in terms of minutes, days, weeks, months, or years. Frequency and rate also fall under the umbrella of the repeatability dimensional property of behavior. The next continuous data collection method we will use is duration. To collect duration data, you will document the length or extent of behavior by recording the time a behavior begins and ends. Sound familiar? Duration data falls directly under the umbrella of temporal extent. Think back to our running example with the stopwatch. We were timing the start at which someone starts running and the time at which they stopped running. We were collecting duration data. Some more examples of duration data can include amount of time spent playing a piano or amount of time spent completing problems on a math worksheet. Let's look at an example of duration data you might take as an RBT. Often, when recording ABC data regarding a child's protest behaviors, the sheet you will be filling out will also have a section that asks for the duration of that protest. So what you would do is look at your watch or the clock on the wall or your phone and note the time the protest began and when it ends. Some supervisors may also ask you to take the frequency data on the duration of protests. So what that would look like is creating tally marks in columns entitled protests with duration of less than 5 seconds, or less than 1 minute, or more than 1 minute, or more than 5 minutes. Through these two conjunctive means of data collection, supervisors are able to assess at what length protests are occurring and how often they occur in that duration. Some instances in which you would consider not taking duration data would be when the behavior being observed occurs frequently or has rapid start and stop cycles. Moving on to the next type of continuous data collection method, latency. Latency falls under the umbrella of temporal locus. Latency data measures how long it takes someone to begin performing a target behavior once the opportunity is present. On your exam, the board likes to use technical jargon for some of these terms. So how latency might be described as an answer to a presented scenario would be the amount of time between the onset of a stimulus and the initiation of a response. Some examples of recording latency data could be the amount of time between receiving a parking ticket and paying for it, or the amount of time it takes a child to come back to the teaching table after saying, "Come here." Be mindful that while both duration and latency measure time, latency is a measure of how long it takes for a behavior to start, and duration is a measure for how long a behavior endures. The last continuous data collection procedure we will discuss is interresponse time. Interresponse time, or also known as IRT, is the amount of time that elapses between two consecutive instances of a response. Like latency, IRT also falls under the umbrella of temporal focus. But rather than looking at the amount of time elapsed between an SD and a response, it is looking at the amount of time between one response and another response. For example, 5 minutes elapsed between two instances of screaming. 3 seconds elapsed between eating the first potato chip and the second potato chip. The behaviors you measure using IRT should fall within the same response class. So I wouldn't use IRT to measure the amount of time it takes between me cooking breakfast in the morning and walking my dog in the afternoon. Those are two completely different behaviors. IRT is a particularly helpful measure to use when you want to assess the rate of responses. For example, if I'm working with a child who eats either too fast or too slow, I would want to take data on the amount of time between the bites of food.